Welcome to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, the definitive resource to help you navigate your way to play college-level sports. Here are your hosts, Chris Legates and Mark Franco, where they want you, the TCS Nation, to be your best.
Welcome, TCS Nation, and thanks for tuning in to the Tackling College Sports Podcast, Session 13. I'm your host, Mark Franco, and alongside me is my co-host, often mistaken for Mr. George Clooney, Chris Legates. Today, Chris and I speak with Ashley McDonough, head women's volleyball coach at Knox College in Illinois. Today, Ashley gives some great advice for student athletes as well as their parents. And in the Getting to Know You section, you're going to hear what Ashley's top 3 songs are, also what book she's reading currently. And while Ashley enjoys Facebook, make sure you stay to the end as she reveals what social media platform you will not find her on. Thanks for checking in with us, and enjoy. Ashley, thanks for joining us on the Tackling College Sports Podcast. It's great to have you here.
Thank you very much for inviting me.
Our pleasure. Hey, can you tell us how you got into the current position you are in?
I applied to Knox through the NCAA Market Job Bank, and they did a phone interview with me a few weeks later. A couple weeks after that, invited me to come out to campus and offered me the job within a couple of days after that. So because I'm originally from the Midwest, it was a good fit for me to come back out here.
Sure. And can you take us on a little bit of a journey prior to Knox, what you were doing?
Yeah, I was coaching at Cayuga Community College in Auburn, New York, and I had been there for a couple of seasons. Prior to that, I was living in Houston, Texas, and I was working with the former U of H volleyball coaching staff and coaching club, coaching high school varsity teams. So I've been doing it for a while.
Excellent. And so 2015 was your first season, and prior to your arrival at Knox, it seemed at least from what I saw, there were some rough years there. In 2014, they went 5-24. In 2013, 3-22. As a coach, how do you go about getting recruits to commit to a program that has struggled in the past? Oh, and by the way, I'll mention that you went 10-17 this year?
Yep, sure did.
Perfect. Yeah, nice turnaround.
Especially since we wound up finishing the season with only 7 athletes that were healthy to play.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, we had a lot of road bumps along the way. But to answer your question, I personally have a pretty strong coaching track record in terms of turning programs around relatively quickly. So I think that recruits are attracted to that because they want to be a part of a program that's growing, especially at the Division III level. A lot of kids choose Division III because they want to come in and play. They don't want to come in and sit a bench. And I think that there's just more playing opportunities with us. And so if a kid sees that a program is on the rise, it's very appealing and very attractive to them. Another thing just for me in terms of recruiting, my preferences, I don't like to do bulk recruiting. I like to pick out very, very select athletes that I'm interested in, kids that I think that are going to be a good fit for us academically, athletically, emotionally, socially here in Galesburg and on our campus. So I think that the personal connection that I make with kids also has a large impact on them choosing to come here. But really, I think the kids they want to be part of a program that they can make an impact on. They don't want to sit the bench for 2 years before they get their shot.
Yeah, come in straight away and be perhaps that impact player.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Chris, go ahead.
Hey, Ashley, good morning. And again, thanks for being with us on the Tackling College Sports Podcast.
Yep.
As I mentioned to you before we started to record, I spent 18 years as a Division III soccer coach. I just left the post in March of this year to move on to a Division II school. So I totally understand what you're talking about with the Division III mentality and what type of student athletes you're looking for. Mm-hmm. At this point round, do you enjoy being at a smaller Division III school?
Absolutely. I mean, I've lived in Houston, I've lived in Syracuse, and I've lived in Chicago. So for me, I enjoy being a part of a small town that has a big community. And Galesburg and Knox both offer that. More than 95, we're a residential campus, so more than 95% of our students live here. And I think that because of that, everything from our student activities to our housing arrangements, it's all designed to help foster and support the intimacy and diversity that our school tries to create. So at a smaller school like Knox, we offer such a personal academic experience that students don't always get at larger institutions.
And again, haven't seen some of those larger institutions in larger cities like you've mentioned.
Mm-hmm.
First, personally, what would you say some of the pros and cons have been for you? And then secondly, what would you say are some of the pros and cons for your student athletes of a smaller Division III school?
I think right off we have small class sizes, and the professors, really make an effort to make that personal connection with their students. They're not just a number. You're not going to sit in a classroom with 200 kids. And I think that makes a big difference. I also think that when you're at a smaller school, because you have that one-on-one experience with your professors, you also don't get teaching assistants facilitating classes. So you're actually on a regular basis getting to take in and absorb the knowledge of the professors that are at these smaller schools. I would say maybe a con for some smaller colleges is that they don't offer as many majors and minors as larger colleges do. But I know we offer more than 60 courses of study between majors and minors. And then we also offer several pre-professional and cooperative programs with graduate schools. Another thing that we offer is that students have a unique opportunity to help design their own major if they're looking to study something more specifically. But I'm a fan of smaller schools, so I don't really see a whole lot of the cons, especially since we do have such an active social campus. Really, the only thing for me is that I've seen or I've heard from kids is that smaller schools tend to not offer necessarily all the majors they're looking for. But if a kid really wants to come to one of those smaller schools, they're going to make sure, obviously, that they have what they're looking for in advance. So I don't really think that that's too big of a deal.
Mm-hmm. And personally, again, what have been some of the pros and cons for you now as you've acclimated yourself into the community there?
People are just really welcoming. I mean, it's very community oriented. We have a lot of programs here on campus to help with transitioning faculty and staff. Even something that might not seem like a big deal, but we have, a warehouse here that people that are leaving or moving or whatever can leave their old furniture at, and, new staff people can go grab something if they need something for their new place. Or there's just a lot of things like that make Knox very unique and very welcoming. And I don't think, again, you're going to get that kind of personal connection at bigger schools. Not that, I went to University of Houston, but so that was obviously a bigger school, but not that you're not going to get that same personal connection in a bigger place. I just think it's more of an intimate connection you make at smaller schools.
And now you're into your real first recruiting cycle now from when you took over the job, and you have 5 players from 5 different states on your roster. Mm-hmm. When you get into the financial aspects of trying to lure players to your institution, what are some of the aspects that you're talking about now when you're sitting down and discussing with student athletes and parents some of the avenues by which they can fund themselves to get to school? Obviously, there are no scholarships or athletic scholarships at Division III institutions.
Yeah, we can't offer athletic, but we can offer a lot of academic money and other merit-based financial aid. And Knox is really good about that. I believe last year they came out and said that they offered more than $20 million in financial aid last year to students. And on top of that, about 75% of our students receive need-based financial aid as well. So I always tell kids, don't look at the sticker price when you're considering Knox. Let's see what your academics are going to get you. Let's see what your community involvement is going to get you, what curriculars you've been involved in. We offer leadership scholarships for being from certain regions of the United States. We offer scholarships for dance. We offer it for the arts. So I would say that my average recruit, at least from talking to kids, telling me what their packages have come back as, I've had kids get up to 66% knocked off that top sticker price just because their grades were so good and they have such good student resume behind them. So I know, like, a lot of times with smaller private schools, it's hard when parents go online and they see how much the school costs right up front, but most of these smaller schools are going to offer really great financial aid in terms of like academics and merit-based awards.
And like I said, 18 years ago, I started a program very similar to what you're doing now at Knox.
Mm-hmm.
And when you look at your recruiting database and you're looking at five different states represented on your roster, where are you going to see these players and how are you getting out there now? Where would we find you, let's say, on these weekends?
Well, club season officially, I guess, has kind of started to kick off some of these warm-up tournaments that are going on right now. Most of the bigger qualifiers are going to start in February. So a few of the ones that I plan on attending, the Lone Star Classic in Dallas, Show Me qualifier in Kansas City, Colorado Crossroads in Colorado, Windy City qualifier in Chicago. So there's a handful of these larger club qualifiers that I'm going to be attending. To be honest, I would say that in general, my first inclination is to look at kids from California, Texas, Colorado, Florida, mostly just because a lot of those kids play year round. Club volleyball is very prevalent in those states. High school programs are strong in those states. Sand volleyball is really big in those states. So, but I mean, I don't limit myself to those places either, but those are where I think I would start my searches.
So come February, you're going to be in the car a lot and working on your frequent flyer miles, I guess.
Pretty much. Yeah, absolutely.
Mark.
Yeah, I just want to add, if I could, to that last question, as far as where you're going to view the student athletes. And for the listeners, is it safe to assume that it's pretty much at these type of showcase and tournaments versus, going to a school during a regular season to view them?
Yeah. A big reason is just because I'm in season at the same time. So yeah. I don't have a lot of time to get out and travel when we're busy, we're competing, we're practicing 6 days a week. So for me to get out during season, it's a stretch. Yeah. Club, it makes it so much easier, especially at these large tournaments. I can watch, 200 different kids that have maybe contacted me, or possibly I contacted them, or maybe a recruiting coordinator or a coach or whoever else had contacted me asking me to come watch.
And you mentioned sand tournaments. Are you just exclusive to indoor, or will you attend sand tournaments as well?
I think for the most part, I'm just going to watch indoor volleyball. But if I'm Texas does a lot of sand volleyball, California, obviously.
Sure.
If I'm in places like that and I have the opportunity to go watch sand, I will. I normally don't make it my first.
It's not a priority. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not my first priority.
Okay, great. So how do you prefer to be contacted by students? What we're doing here on this podcast is really trying to be a resource for that student athlete and their parents looking to make that leap. And we're always asked when I'm in Chris's presence and he's dealing with some of his kids that he's coaching now, you always hear it from them, or actually more so the parent, should the student contact. So how do you prefer to be contacted by student athletes?
Initially, either email or by filling out our recruiting questionnaire. Reason being is that I want to have a rundown of their academics, their test scores, their athletic successes, links to their film, their physical attributes, community involvement. I want to know a lot, as much as I can, about the kid before I start to move forward with them. After that, like to set up a campus visit, possibly come see them play, like I was saying, during the club season. But I like to have as much information on somebody ahead of time.
Sure. And I assume if that individual does an official visit, stays over, you would obviously speak with the team about that individual afterwards?
Oh, sure. Actually, I try to make sure that every kid that visits us gets to meet my team. To me, that's something, any kid that visits here that I'm talking to, I even suggest, I'm like, hey, you know what, even if you go visit another school, and I highly recommend that kids talk to a current student athlete that attends that school already. To me, I can talk to kids about facts about Knox all day long. I can tell them about our academic programs, financial aid, all that stuff. But at the end of the day, it's my student athletes that live here. They have their work study here. They compete, eat, sleep, have their friends, etc. So you're not going to get the same perspective talking to me as you would one of my kids. So, I tell prospective athletes all the time, even if you go to another school, make sure that you talk to one of their current athletes before you make that decision. I think that you get such a different perspective that I think is so important for these kids.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that. Ashley, our first contact, if you remember, was in a Facebook group for student athletes and recruiting. So on that note, how do you wish not to be contacted? And I know we both chimed in on this question that was posed. So can you elaborate a bit about that?
It's funny you mentioned that, because I would say that I don't want kids contacting me on my personal social media. To me, it just crosses personal boundaries. I would never contact a kid through their Facebook or their Twitter or anything like that. I think that as kids are starting college, something important for them to think about is college is preparing them for their professional careers, and I don't think that's a good professional way for kids to reach out when they have, most of the time, all they have to do is go to the college's website and they'll get the coach's phone number, their emails, all that. I just think there are better ways to go about it. I always have a personal relationship with my student athletes, but in terms of contacting a coach for the first time, I think that personal social media accounts is just kind of, it crosses boundaries that I don't know that I would be comfortable with. Some other coaches might not feel the same way, but to me, that just crosses personal boundaries.
And it may be that age group, I mean, that's what they do. That's what they know.
Right.
They're probably not even viewing that as being improper.
Right.
Versus, I deal with that with my eldest, who's 16, and she's, call someone on the phone. What do you mean?
Yeah.
Email? I don't use email.
That's funny too, because some of the other coaches I've talked to, I'll ask some of the coaches that coach male sports. And it's always odd that they're like, oh yeah, I make, 200 phone calls a week or something crazy. And I'm like, I never make phone calls, because girls, I don't know if it's just, I don't want to, I guess, throw a totally blanket statement out there, but I feel like girls just don't like getting phone calls, and it's like being put on the spot. I don't know if I don't know what it is, but they just don't like it. I've had more kids that will actually say, no, I prefer to be emailed. And then, after maybe we've talked or they visited, then they're okay with me calling them or whatever. But yeah, right. I don't get it.
It is. It's sort of ironic that everybody walks around with phones, yet they very rarely use that actual device to speak to anybody.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Weird. What a concept.
I just want to continue with this part of the question and phrase it such that, can you speak about parents? Do you want a parent or parents contacting you?
Not initially. I like the athlete to be the one to contact me first. I think, it's their college experience. I want parents to support their kids. I want them to help them out and help them guide them through the college search process. But these are young adults. These are 17, 18, 19-year-old kids. They need to be accountable for themselves, and they need to be responsible for what direction their academic and athletic life is taking. So if after the kid's has contacted me and we've talked for a while, maybe the parent wants to get in touch with me to make, the arrangements to come visit and things like that. To me, that's acceptable. Like, that's fine. And I encourage, again, the parents to support and to help their kids with that. But that first point of contact, the kid needs to be the one to do it.
Yeah, it's a point we hammer home quite often on this podcast. It comes up a lot. Chris just spoke at an event recently, and after the event, there was a parent who came up and was like, "My kid is so shy. Should I call for her?" And we're like, "No."
Yeah.
She has to learn to be an adult and speak for herself now.
Yeah, exactly.
It's part of the learning process. So, excellent answer, Chris. Go ahead.
Yeah, there is a lot of questions that come from parents about that, Ashley. And again, there is a certain role that we think, and we'd like to get perspective from other coaches, because often parents sometimes act as agents for the players,
right.
and it doesn't do anything in the developmental process for the student athlete, we feel. So it's great to hear your perspective on it.
Mm-hmm. No problem.
Now, here's a big question. Have you ever gotten the Coach Ashley, I'm very interested in attending Carroll University, or something where they've put the wrong address or the wrong title on the email for you?
I get that, or I get them just using a wrong name, or like, my name's not Susan, my name's Ashley, something crazy like that. But it is what it is. I mean, kids sometimes are overwhelmed. They are trying to contact, or they're trying to respond to several coaches. Yes, they should be better at double checking those kind of things, but it's a mistake. It happens.
Okay, so you don't put them into the delete box like some of the other coaches on this podcast have.
We've had coaches say that, yeah.
I will probably razz the kid a little bit about it and give him a little grief, but it's in joking. But I understand. Like, I've made stupid mistakes like that before, so it happens. I don't think the kid was doing it maliciously or to show me that they're looking at multiple schools, or I don't think that's the intention.
You mentioned what you want to see, whether a resume and obviously athletic and social and things that they do in school, plus GPA and things of that nature. Mm-hmm. And you mentioned video, which is very important component to our recruiting process. Mm-hmm. What would you say are things you're looking for in a video that are positive, and what things would you advise, let's say, student athletes to stay away from when sending a video to a coach?
This might sound stupid, but one of the things that irritates me is like the loud thumping techno music in the background. I'm like, why are we in like all like the special effects they might add to it? Like, just what I want is just send me 5 to 10 minutes of unedited game film that, the kid has made contact with the ball several times. I get to see different skills being utilized, and that's it. Just leave it alone after that. Like, people spend so much time and energy editing these and trying to make them look like, they've been these professionally done films with special effects and all this stuff. And I'm like, I personally don't really like highlight film, because anybody can make themselves look like a stud. What if they put together a highlight reel that has 15, maybe great attacks or great passes or whatever it might be? Well, you just played a whole season. Those might have been the only good 15 attacks or passes or whatever you had all season long. So I like unedited film. Don't mess with it. Save yourselves, time and energy, and just, let me see a kid doing things right. I want to see a kid that, maybe has some areas that need further development, but at least it gives me a more complete picture of who I'm talking to.
We've had about 7 other coaches from other sports, Ashley, who all are in the same boat that you are. And again, myself being number 8, we're all looking for, I think, that 10 minutes of video unedited, without the music, without the techno. And I think even in some cases, like I've mentioned it in an event I just spoke at, you sometimes even want to see mistakes in soccer because you want to see how the player handles it. Do they hang their head, and are they done for the next play, or do they respond? And in these things, I think, like you're just mentioning, it's a great message for student athletes that you really don't need to spend $500, $1,000 on a service where the guy comes in with this, huge camera and is going to, shoot you from different angles and all that. And a lot of times I think you probably run into it as well, where parents think they need to spend that kind of money for video service. Yeah,
I just prefer, give me, use your old camcorder, give me 10 minutes and we're good to go.
Get the Betamax out. One other question that kind of parlays off of this one is, do you involve yourself with a lot of recruiting services?
Really, the only one that I use 2. The one that I use the most, though, is NCSA.
Yep.
And I just really like them a lot. It's a one-stop shop. I get all their information. I mean, now obviously providing the kid fills it out completely, but I get all the kids' information all in one place, and it just makes my life so much easier. I use Be Recruited every now and again. My preference it's NCSA, but I use Be Recruited as well.
So you would say for a student athlete, these are good services for them to take advantage of?
I think so. I think it's the best way for them to reach the maximum number of coaches.
Right.
And to get these coaches they're trying to get in contact with, all of their information. I mean, I tell kids all the time, if I have to search and rescue somebody's information and like spend 20 minutes looking for an email address or whatever else, I'm just going to move on.
Well, it's time now, Ashley, for you to go onto the hot seat. Okay. Mark's going to ask you 4 questions or so. This is called our getting to know you section. So now we're going to find out real important stuff about you, Ashley. Go ahead, Mark.
I swear soon we're gonna put the music to this, the Getting to Know You song,
No.
Okay, question number 1. If we were to pick up your phone currently, what would be the top 3 played songs?
The first two might be surprising. The last one being that I lived in Texas almost 18 years probably isn't as surprising.
I hope it's country.
The third one is.
Perfect.
The first two, All Eyes on Me by Tupac.
Okay.
The second one would be Boys in the Hood by Eazy-E.
Wow.
And then the last one, Family Tradition by Hank Williams Jr. probably.
Oh, wow.
Well, that runs the spectrum,
huh?
That's all over the place, sure.
That's pretty diverse.
Hank Jr., I love it. All right, question number 2. I'm going to tell you this one stumps a lot of people. What book or books are you currently reading? And if none, what books would you suggest to our listeners?
I haven't picked up a book since before my season had started. I finished one right then. I need to find a new one. But the one that I had finished right before season started was A Passion to Lead by Jim Calhoun. I loved his career. I thought it was awesome how he just took a average program and turned it into what it is. Even after he left, it's still a dominant program. I just think that was so cool. So I loved reading about him motivating athletes and the value of tough love and being honest. And I thought that was a great book. I think that's a great book for coaches to read, but I think anybody pretty much that enjoys a good biography or so could enjoy that book. And then anything by John Wooden. I have a couple of his books in my office.
Sure. Excellent. Okay. Next one. Do you have a favorite quote or quotes that you like to use?
I have one that I use all the time, and I have no idea who says it, and I've looked it up, and I can't find a name for it behind it. But I always tell my team, never say can't unless it's followed up by the word yet.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, I like that one too. Yeah.
I have it in my team handbook, so I think it's pretty central to my coaching philosophy.
I'll make sure that that gets put on the show notes along with everything else. And then lastly, any web-based sites or tools that you simply cannot live without, either for work or for personal use?
I mentioned NCSA before. I think for work, that's just a really good one for me.
Okay.
Personal, not really. I use Facebook like most people to, stay in contact with family, especially since, coaches move around quite a bit. So
Sure.
I would say that, but NCSA for work.
Well, you handled that like a charm.
Thanks.
Chris, go ahead.
That wasn't too bad, Ashley, right? You made it out okay.
I did.
Typically, we find the coaches usually say book. Yeah, I'm not sure what a book is. But we'll bring you back on task now, and we'll reel it in here. You work with younger players as well. You've worked with juniors and athletes, 13 to 15 in that age as well. What do you think now about players or athletes who are now spending 11 and a half months a season playing their sport? And how are you finding the importance of rest and how that factors into things?
Well, for volleyball specifically, kids generally go from school ball right into club ball. And then in summer, it's either camps and clinics or they're playing sand volleyball. So I would say the 11 and a half month is a pretty accurate estimate on how much these kids are playing. So, I mean, they're active all the time, but I don't suggest dropping any of those seasons, but I think it's important for kids and parents to be aware of overtraining and to take preventative measures to reduce the risk of injury. The biggest issue that I have is hearing coaches be dismissive of athletes when they say something hurts, especially with young kids. So I always tell my kids to let me know immediately so we can take a minor situation and take care of it before it turns into something major. There's a reason why we have athletic training staffs to be able to help with those things. So I think that parents just need to, and coaches, young coach, club coaches, juniors coaches, just need to take the kids seriously when they tell them something's bothering them. To me, if you have to give a kid, especially a younger kid, give them a day off, give them a few days off, are those few days really going to make a difference in this child's career in athletics? I don't think so. So I just think that kids get dismissed sometimes, and I think that's my pet peeve with overworking kids.
That's a great point. And in soccer, I run a club program, and we see numbers around the age of 14 or 15 drop significantly because kids have been now in pressure-packed situations since they were 9 or 8, having to try out for certain teams. And the psychological impact of now the game almost becoming a chore is very prevalent in soccer at those ages. Are you finding that in club volleyball as well?
Yeah, I mean, I can speak from personal experience. My 15th club team that I played on, that was the first time I tore my rotator, and then I tore it again in college. And then after, I tore my labrum. So
Wow.
my shoulder's gone through the ringer, and it started when I was younger. I had Osgood-Schlatter's disease in both my knees when I was running summer track when I was like 9, 10 years old. And I did sports year round. And so I can speak to that personally. So that's why I say if a kid says something's bothering them, you really, as a coach and as a parent, you really need to listen to them. I'm not saying baby them because, if you fall down and bump your elbow and you get a little bruise, that's one thing. But a kid generally, I think anyways, knows the difference between I just scratched myself and something is wrong. Every time I jump, I'm feeling pain in my knee. Every time I swing at a ball overhead, I feel something pulling in my back. Like, those are things that people really need to be careful of.
And you're looking again now at the college level where you have to put, let's say in your case, 27 matches in a 2.5, 3 month window, and you have to give a day off every 7 days per the NCAA rules. There's not a lot of time for recovery, is there?
There isn't. And at the end of the season, I spoke to y'all earlier about at the end of my season, we only finished with 7 athletes that were healthy, that could play. And, we had a few day break in between matches towards the end of the season. And instead of, I gave the kids an extra 2 days off. I just said, you know what, everybody seems to be broken right now. So it's not, again, those 2 days is not going to, my kids aren't going to revert back 2 months worth of work we've put in because I give them 2 days off. But if I don't give them these couple of extra days off, I might be down to 6 players. So to me, you have to just listen to your athletes. And, you just have to give them that time for rest and recovery.
And certainly less is more in some cases.
Sometimes it is. I mean, in preseason, yeah, we go hard. At the beginning of the season, yeah, we go hard. By the end of the season, the kids can probably parrot everything I've told them all season long. So again, giving them that extra couple of days off, it's not going to take us back 2 months, but doing less, like you said, it's actually doing more for them.
Let's switch topics to some of the more, let's say, prevalent features in today's student athlete and college athletics as well. How does Knox and, let's say, your volleyball program deal with social media?
Our sports information director is the one who manages our athletic department social media accounts. I personally manage our Knox volleyball Facebook page, but at the beginning of each season, I talk to my team, asking them to be smart about what gets put out on the internet. I have zero tolerance for athletes that, I'm not even gonna lie, I've actually trolled some prospective student athletes to see what kind of stuff they're putting out there. Because, kids could come into my office and smile and say, hey coach, I really want to be a part of your program. And then go back on the internet and do nothing but gripe about their teammates. And that's not somebody that I want around. So, I have, like I said, I have zero tolerance for athletes who publicly bad talk their teammates, their coaches, their schools, using excessive curse words. I mean, to me, it creates animosity and divide. And when you're trying to build up a program, those are things that you just can't have.
We've had that. My follow-up question you were just going to touch base on right there with recruits and looking at their social media. Again, I've been in the business now 25 years, and that is part of the recruiting process now, is to look at social media accounts of prospective student athletes. And there have been ones where they're making obscene gestures or, they're shown in partying situations. And you're right. I think we can both agree there have been situations where you've put a line right through a player because of their behavior on social media, correct?
Absolutely. I mean, I can use the example. I've had a kid in the past that, thought it was cool or funny to make their, what's that called? The banner page, like the picture that's on top of your Facebook page, not your profile, but the other picture. Had a picture of themselves at a party with a joint in their hand. And I'm like, because that's really going to, I'm like, how does that, in any way, which shape or form, how does that seem like a good idea to put that out there? Like, I just don't understand it. And yeah, immediately I'm like, yeah, all right. And we're done here. So, I mean, it's things like that. Kids they don't understand, not all kids, but, I just don't get that putting things out there like that and thinking that there's going to be zero repercussion because of it.
Yeah, we've had instances where a lot of them, they don't believe that the school actually looks. And we've had some interviewees on that their department, they're at a big institution. They've got guys that are just doing that full time.
Yeah.
Right.
Monitoring student athletes' social media accounts.
Right.
Absolutely.
We were told that the University of Michigan employs 2 full-time people just to monitor social media accounts of their student athletes.
Makes sense. I mean, if you're, especially at a school like that where these kids, are on a scholarship, I mean, it's not being on a payroll, but it kind of is being on a payroll when you're getting more or less paid to go to school, or it's being covered for you to go to school. My boss wouldn't want me out there doing stuff like that. I'm a paid employee here and I represent the school. Athletes are the exact same way. And I don't think that kids always look at it from that angle.
Sure. And when you talk about donors where there's millions of dollars involved, that something that's said in the wrong context could cost an institution millions of dollars in donors.
Exactly.
My last 2 questions I'm going to group together for you, Ashley. What advice, if we bring this into a little capsule now, would you give to parents about the recruiting process? And what advice would you give to the student athletes about the recruiting process?
For parents, I kind of touched on this already, but I would say support your kids, but don't hover them. Let them fail just as you let them succeed. Mental toughness is developed through overcoming challenges. So if you're always trying to keep your kids from failing and always putting that cushion below them, they're not going to know how to fall. And if they don't know how to fall, they don't know how to get back up. So that would be something that I would tell parents for kids. And I'm going to just this is just a pet peeve of mine, but I would say check your email frequently and respond to coaches that take the time to reach out to you, whether you're interested in or not. If a kid isn't interested in a school, it's okay. And I think kids sometimes feel bad telling coaches no. I hear no all the time. It doesn't hurt my feelings. Obviously I wish maybe I could get that kid here, but I'm not going to, lose sleep either. So if a kid isn't interested, I think that they need to take the time to just tell that school or tell that coach, no, thank you, I'm going in another direction. Because to me, they're taking time away from another athlete who might want that opportunity and does want that attention.
That's a great message. Thanks, Ashley. Mark.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Ashley, before we wrap up, we're kind of just crossed the 35-minute mark here. So if you could, do you have any final thoughts or parting words for the listeners today?
Just that I hope they found something useful in what I had to say, I guess. But and if y'all have seen, I make myself available on social media on some of the recruiting sites for people to ask me questions, and I've had people send me emails or parents ask me questions and things like that. So I'm available to answer questions if people want to contact me beyond
Perfect.
today.
And that leads right into the next point. How can our listeners get in touch with you, whether it be email, web, social media, whatever you'd like to put out there, we'll put up on the show notes.
My email address is probably the best. And, if they want to make phone calls, that's fine too. I have no problem with it. I'm one of those people that isn't scared of using my phone for phone calls. So
I'll make sure that I add the email address and your phone number as well. Perfect. Cool. And then lastly, do you have anything that you wish to promote today, whether it be camps or programs?
Just good luck to our men's and women's basketball team at Knox, since they both just started their seasons.
Okay.
And I guess that's really about it. I don't have too much going on in the upcoming month other than the holidays. So, just good luck to the Prairie Fire men's and women's basketball teams.
Perfect. Perfect. Once again, we've been speaking with Ashley McDonough, head coach women's volleyball at Knox College. Ashley, we appreciate your time. It was a great session.
Yeah,
awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks for having me.
And remember, TCS Nation, you can get in contact with us via the web at tcsnation.com, via email at mark@tcsnation.com, and chris@tcsnation.com. Facebook is facebook.com/tackling college sports. Twitter @TCS Nation, on the gram, TCS Nation, and believe it or not, yes, we do have a Pinterest page. Pinterest.com/tackling college.
I don't know Pinterest.
Sorry. We love you, Pinterest. Once again, thanks for being here, and until next time, be your best.
Your college sports future awaits. So join the TCS Nation and be your best.